Thank you so much for joining us on a Thursday. Yes, it's quite interesting to be back on the air here on Breakfast Central. How was your day like, especially yesterday when you heard of the news of the reopening of the Niger border? And how did you take the other interesting stories as well? Anyway, I'm Joe Hanson saying good morning.
Great to have you join us this morning. It's another Thursday morning. We have the next 2 hours to share with you the big stories happening across Nigeria. And of course, definitely the opening or the reopening of the borders with Niger definitely will make one of our top stories this morning. One of the things we're going to be talking about. People have criticized the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu for seemingly not being able to achieve much with any of the policies that he has set in motion since assuming office, including the student loan, and of course now with the Niger border closure also. These are some of the things that we'll be talking about today, amongst other things. We have Bola joining us with Breakfast Headlines. Good morning, Bola.
And Joe, happy Blue Thursday. I see both of you are twinning in blue.
I can see you're rocking your blue as well.
Okay, well.
You got the memo. That's good.
Well, it's good to be here another Thursday morning.
That's right.
Absolutely.
What do you make of the student loan being suspended indefinitely? And the reason given is because there are some things that they need to work on before they return back to it again. But there was no definite date given. What do you make of that?
Well, actually, when the news just broke out about the student loan, I was wondering as to what modalities would be used to know the poorest people, whom will benefit from this loan. So if they have to go back and rework it, look at the figures and data again, I think it's a step in the right direction. But hopefully this time around, when they come out to say, hey, they want to commence it, they should not, suspend or postpone it, any further. And talking about the reopening of the Niger border, I think it's a good development to help us mend ties with Niger and also, in a way, strengthen our security, along the Sahel region.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, it is just another sign that a lot of the things that have been mentioned, and of course blown out of proportion by government spokespersons have really just been propaganda. Yeah. It's never because any of these things have been pre-planned, and of course, they've gone through the details and made these decisions. They never made any proper planning for the student loan. And even when it was announced back then, a lot of people pointed out that this is almost going to, not going to fail. It didn't seem like it was going to happen. But of course, they partied with it, celebrated it like it was one huge achievement by the government. A couple of months later, it failed. And of course, people would mention that when it's time to approve 15 billion naira for renovation of the vice president's house, there's no issues. They go straight to it. There's the approval. When it's time to approve money for the National Assembly members to buy cars, they approve billions of naira. There's zero issues whatsoever. But the ones that are most important to Nigerians would always have this, problem here or there. But why I'm saying so is Nigeria Air happened the same way. They launched and, had this huge propaganda around Nigeria Air, and everybody was celebrating it. And of course, see how it ended. There's no actual plan. It is just, what is a thing that we can do now to make us look good? Same thing with the subsidy removal. No actual plan. What's a thing that we can do that will make this government look like it's working? And they make all these announcements and it fails a couple of months later. It's heartbreaking. It's
really heartbreaking. I think one of the things that we could actually look at and possibly learn from, especially from the presidency, is the fact that the haste in making purported announcements, it is alarming because it shows that if I'm to look at it categorically or rate it with a percentage, we would say out of 100%, 80% of the announcements made have not come to fruition. The announcement of the UAE, the announcement of the lifting of the ban on Nigerians traveling to Dubai and so on, the announcement on this one in particular, which is the school student loan, so many other announcements made by the special advisors. At the end of the day, it seems like everybody runs back to hide in the dark, and then there's a seemingly quiet or no sound following that. But good enough for the student loan, they did come out and they were honest to say, there's some finishing touches we need to make. And who laughed last? The critics who had initially told you that, be careful, don't be in a hurry to initiate a student loan. But then again, Bola, I don't know, you have your say. You might want to touch on it quickly, and then we can, of course, advance to the next thing.
Well, like I said before, initially, when this news broke out as to the student loan, the questions that comes to mind was, what are the modalities in place? You know one thing about Nigeria, we are not so great at record keeping, you know. So the top on the mind of people was, how are they going to go about, you know, ensuring those who are actually underprivileged are the ones who have access to this student loan? If you look at the case of also disbursing funds to the poorest of the poor, one of the questions people raised also was, how do you know exactly, you know, what data or information or figures do you have as to those who would get this fund? So same question also arose when it comes for the student loan, as to who in the strata of the society are we targeting? Okay, yes, the underprivileged. Then how do you access them? Where are the datas, you know, when it comes to record keeping for Nigeria? Do we have that in place to ensure these are the people that actually get the student loan or not? So that was the, controversy when this news broke out. They're going back to clean their house and put their things in order, you know, before they can, you know, implement or execute these. I think it's a step in the right direction. But I'm hoping this stopgap or this suspension of the student loan would be indeed the time they need to ensure they get their data right and then the modalities right for this student loan.
They are learning, you know, from the previous government, but they're not learning, there wasn't a lot of positives from previous government, but, you know, they're learning, you know, the same idea of government by propaganda. You know, what is a thing that we can put in place or we can announce that will make us look good? You know, it's not action. You know, like Odumodu, you know, Black, the famous philosopher, said, show walking. Show walking. There is a great, you know, philosopher from, you know, great Greek origins, anyway. Odumodu Black. So he says show walking, and that's what the Tinubu government needs to do. Instead of propaganda and making these big announcements that fail a couple of months later. The Nigerians don't need that. Show walking, all right.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines here on News Central TV. I am Bola. We begin the news in West Africa, Nigeria, where the federal government on Wednesday said it would not pay a dime as ransom for the release of over 280 pupils and teachers of government secondary school and early year primary school at Kuriga, Kaduna State, kidnapped on March 7th. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, revealed this to State House correspondent at the end of Wednesday's Federal Executive Council meeting held at the Osarogie Villa in Abuja. President Bola Tinubu has announced the immediate reopening of Nigeria's land and air borders with the Republic of Niger, along with the lifting of other sanctions imposed on the country. The decision follows the directives of the ECOWAS authorities of heads of state and government made during the extraordinary summit held in Abuja on February 24th, 2024. President Bola Tinubu has sworn in 17 federal commissioners of the National Population Commission, which he nominated last November. The 17 new and returning commissioners took the oath of office in 3 batches of 6 and 5 on Wednesday afternoon at the council chamber of the Osarogie Villa in Abuja. Cameroon's government has branded 2 political coalition groups as having an illegal character and warned them to suspend their activities 18 months ahead of a presidential election. International NGOs accuse the regime of President Paul Biya, who has ruled with an iron fist for more than 41 years, of systematically suppressing opposition. To the south of the continent, where South African police authorities have apprehended a suspect in connection with the tragic murder of 3 Egyptian Coptic Orthodox monks within the church. In a statement released by the South African Police Service on Wednesday, it was confirmed that a 35-year-old man had been taken into custody. He is slated to appear before the Cullinan Magistrate Court on March 14th, 2024. The mother of a missing 6-year-old girl charged with trafficking and kidnapping, has abandoned her plea for bail, sending shockwaves through South Africa. Tensions ran high outside the Vedrenberg court as police deployed tear gas and grenades to disperse protesters amidst the latest developments in the case of Jocelyn Rachlin Smith's disappearance. In the east of the continent, a Rwandan court has upheld the decision to bar opposition leader and government critic Victoria Enigbre from contesting the upcoming presidential elections in July. The court cited previous convictions for terrorism and genocide denial as grounds for her disqualification. And that's a wrap on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Osarogie and Joe.
Thank you so much, Bola, for the stories. Much has been said, and hopefully let's see if much will be done. The border reopening to Niger Republic is a conversation that we would have pretty much here this morning, especially looking at the fact that the federal government and the entire ECOWAS decided to backtrack on its initial process of ensuring that they get sanctioned. Why the backtrack? Many have said there are fears of Russia, China support, and of course, the landlocked borders could have also contributed to Nigeria's rise in inflation. Many have also attributed that to the reason why it needs to be opened, and hopefully many other borders will be opened, the Cotonou-Benin border and so on and so forth, so that dollar will indeed, lose its respect to the naira, and then food will be able to circulate and hunger will be a thing of the past, hopefully. I don't know what your thoughts are or your situations to this.
Well, hopefully, just to touch on what she said about food prices, it is hoped, we're hoping this will help ease the economic hardship in Nigeria. We've had, escalating prices in goods and services. Also, when it comes to, security, for me in particular, I am, kind of happy about it because, sharing border with another country and then being, at loggerheads with them in terms of sanctions being imposed to them, has kind of frayed that relationship, so that this reopening would help mend that relationship, which in turn will help strengthen our security here in Nigeria. And also, possibly, drive down the escalating prices of goods and services in Nigeria and help alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians.
Yeah, I'm really just, trying to, I don't know what the mindset would be across, ECOWAS member states, because it feels like what they hope to achieve with the sanction placed on Niger failed. And, now everybody's just back to square one, with the coup still in place in Niger. So I'm not sure how they would feel and how this would affect the strength of ECOWAS going forward. But I'm guessing, it's one of the things that they would, deliberate on, as these ECOWAS heads continue to meet. Bola, we'll be seeing you again pretty soon. Thanks for stopping by.
It's good to be here.
Welcome once again. President Bola Tinubu has said that no ransom will be paid for the rescue of the children abducted from Kuriga in Kaduna State and other people in parts of Nigeria. The president was quoted to have said this during the Federal Executive Council meeting that was held at the presidential villa in Abuja on Wednesday, following the call to dialogue with bandits and not follow the ways of his predecessor by Sheikh Ahmad Abubakar Gumi. President Tinubu made his stance against payment of ransom to kidnappers and that the current administration is determined to tackle kidnapping and other criminal activities in the country, as kidnappings, especially mass abductions, will not be tolerated under his administration.
Well, you can recall that at least 61 people were reportedly abducted as terrorists attacked Bola, a community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State on Monday. Days prior to that attack, terrorists had invaded a public school in Kuriga and abducted over 287 school children in the same state.
In Council today, Mr. President reiterated his directive to the security agencies and the Ministry of Defense to ensure that our kids that have been abducted by these criminal gangs are brought back to their homes safely. And Mr. President has also reiterated his zero tolerance for the payment of ransom. That was also mentioned by Mr. President in Council today. So the security agencies are working around the clock these children and people that have been abducted by criminal elements will be brought back to safety pretty soon. The security agencies are working hard in that direction.
All right, so there you have it. That's one of the first stories here on Breakfast Central. Looking at the statement made by the president saying there is no negotiation and nothing will be done, no payment of ransom to the kidnappers. If you do recall, the kidnappers who had kidnapped over 287, of which many have said is almost up to 300 students, have asked for 40 trillion naira. That's one of the requests. Hilux, they did ask for about 11.
Motorcycles, I think that was even for a different, I think there was one that kidnapped 16 people.
16 people, yeah. I beg your pardon. That's 16. I'm piecing all of them together, of course. So if you have that one, they had about 40 trillion. You had another one who requested for 1 billion naira. Okay, that's another one. You can see that on the screen there. They also, another one requested for 1 billion naira. And then you had another one who has also requested for a huge sum of money and certain requests here and there. So these are the dates of the different kidnaps that we've had. So far, so good. 285 students. You also had on March 12th, which is just recently, they invaded Buddha Hausa community in Kajuru local government area. 61 people have equally been kidnapped. So the kidnap is starting to look like it is back in terms of, it's always been there. It's never left. It's always been there. In the past 8 years, we've seen it. Going into the 9th year of the APC administration. Even prior to that, we did see that. But currently, it seems like it is here to stay. However, the worry is in the demands. The demands seem to have heightened, and the demands seem to have gone beyond what is normal. So the president saying we're not paying, there is no need to negotiate, has already taken Sheikh Gumi out of the equation, even though Gumi has suggested that they should actually start negotiations with the kidnappers. But the president is saying, Gumi, step aside. We're not going to repeat what the predecessor did. Yeah. Now, wonders will or shall never end when it gets to the point where we hope there wouldn't be a backtrack.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there also needs to be, a deeper look into how these things were handled before, under the previous administration. If Sheikh Gumi is advising, he's saying that the previous administration paid ransom through him. Because Nigeria has never made it legal to pay ransom. The Nigerian state has never, had it legal that you take from federal government coffers to pay ransom to kidnappers. That has never happened. So it's not breaking news. When the government says, there will be no negotiations, there will be no ransom. That has always been the case. So if Sheikh Gumi is saying, do like the previous administration, is he then, in a subtle way, letting us know that the previous administration was paying ransom to kidnappers? I remember that former Kaduna State Governor Nasser El-Rufai did mention that he paid, bandits at some point or so, to keep them away from killing residents in Kaduna State. There's that part. There's, obviously also, it's a good thing, that the president has made this statement publicly, even if, like I said, it's not breaking news. Everybody knows this. It's not new information. But there's also, the role that the government should play here, which is extremely urgent. Aside the statements that you would make, condemning kidnapping, saying you would not be negotiating and whatnot, Nigerians would like to see that you will actually rescue these people, because it makes absolutely no sense to anybody in any part of the world that 287 people can just simply be kidnapped and taken away into parts of the country, and you cannot find them, or you can't rescue them. Nobody would believe this. In any language that you speak these or you say these things, nobody's going to believe that people can kidnap 200 plus people, almost 300 people, or 61 people, the numbers are varying, and just simply take them away and start placing demands. It makes absolutely no sense. It happened, with the Chibok girls. It happened with, in Dapchi also. But it's only in Nigeria that you hear of these things, and the federal government doesn't have a proper response to the kidnapping of 300 of its citizens. The logistics that are required, first of all, to kidnap 300 people, it's definitely not easy. And so the government cannot, I mean, this basically shows the ease with which these people operate. If you can move 300 people that you have kidnapped into a secret location, you know, which is expected, it means that these things are done with so much ease in those parts of the country that the government, of course, has a lot of questions to answer with regards to its fight against insecurity. And so, you know, it brings us to now question what, you know, in what ways the current administration is tackling kidnapping different. In what ways are they doing things different? In what ways have they maybe started to redirect funding, you know, in the security sector? In what ways have they started to invest in a different form of security architecture to tackle kidnapping? What exactly are they doing different for the president to say that he will not tolerate kidnapping in his administration? In what ways are our security agents acting different? Is the budget for security higher? Are they, you know, taking better trainings, you know, counter-terrorism, counter-kidnapping trainings? What exactly are they doing different?
But Osarogie, another thing I wonder about is the fact that the United States says they are offering to help. We do recall that the United States had said they would offer to help initially a few years ago, and during the Jonathan administration, they were going to come in to help with the Chibok girls and the likes. Did Nigerians get a full brief of what happened after that, up until date? Sketchy. And here, they're offering to help again. But not just that. One of the major worries and concern is, like we said yesterday, is the fact that monies have been spent to purchase security, you know, gadgets, equipment, to ensure that the forces are empowered so as to mitigate or to cut any or either of these kind of kidnappings, attacks, insurgencies, you name them or whatnot. But have they been put to good use? I did mention here as well that we do recall the police IG testing the new drones that were acquired. And they did mention that these drones could actually see far, could do this. Explanation was made. So it seems like we're starting to have more PR than more action. That's what we're starting to see now. There's a lot of PR going on, a lot of information being decimated, but there's less action being taking place.
I don't want to, you know, completely knock them off and say they are doing absolutely nothing.
No,
you know,
we're not saying that. We're just saying, we're asking questions. Where are they?
I want to give them benefit of doubt that there's actually some work being done. You know, maybe, you know, they're investing more in intelligence gathering and all of that, which is fine. But, you know, if you don't have a government or a police spokesperson who is honest and open, you know, with, you know, be able to tell Nigerians, okay, this is where we are, this is where we're coming from, this is where we hope to go to, these are the investments that we've made, this is level of infrastructure, you know, and of course, we're not necessarily giving out security information, but, you know, just being able to detail those steps. Listen, to deal with insecurity in Nigeria is more than just buying bigger guns. Nigeria already has a border control problem. Nigeria already has a poverty problem, unemployment problem. And these aren't things that are going to be fixed in 2 weeks or in 1 weekend. It's going to take months. It's going to even take years to sort these things out. But what you would expect is that the government will be able to show that, yes, we understand in pure detail what the problems are and what we need to start tackling. The free flow of weapons across Nigeria's borders, the free flow of weapons you know, across the country, is one of the major problems that the Nigerian government must start to tackle. Because we've always mentioned that none of these bandits, none of these terrorists, these AK-47 rifles, they're not locally produced. They somehow, some way find their way, you know, across Nigeria's borders into the country. And if you have thousands of people walking around with AK-47 rifles and other very, very high caliber weapons, that's not a good situation to be at. It's not a good place to be. And so, how are we tackling the proliferation of arms across Nigeria? How are we tackling Nigeria's porous borders? Fisayo Shoyombo has repeatedly in the last 2 weeks put out reports of smuggling of rice and the issues that he has investigated with Fiji, Nigeria, showing how porous and how much criminality and smuggling there allegedly is in Nigeria's borders, in Nigerian Customs Service. These are things that, it's not just rice that is getting smuggled rather. If you have these bags of rice and foodstuff being smuggled, it means that arms are being smuggled also into the country, if his allegations, are confirmed to be true. And so these are, some of the things that we must tackle, aside just making these big statements that we will not pay ransom. So I believe that this is what the president should be showing, that we understand that we have a problem with the borders. The Interior Minister must say, okay, this is where we have the biggest challenge with the proliferation of arms. The IG of police, the service chiefs will say, okay, this is where we find the biggest challenge, and this is how we're tackling them. And we know that in a 6-month or 8-month or a 1-year period, these things will be sorted. Making big, bold statements by, and saying we will not pay ransom, this will not be tolerated in my government, that doesn't in any way bring comfort to anybody, because the previous administration said the same thing. President Muhammad Idris said the same thing. He gave marching orders a million times. He said kidnapping will not be tolerated. He said banditry will not be tolerated. But it was free for all banditry and free for all, kidnapping. These things must be taken and be addressed step by step. And there's no moving forward if this is where we will continue to be, releasing press statements and, making bold statements, in FEC meetings.
Very, 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 very.
And of course, Nigeria's unemployment rate also.
Yeah,
like
that's increased.
You can't have these number of unemployed Nigerians just hanging around and expect that crime will not increase.
Talking about that unemployment rate, it also ties to the recent happenings at the Senate. And we're going to look at Nigeria's 2024 budget controversy. Now, don't forget, budget, which has taken time and did take time when the fiscal allocation and, of course, the budget was indeed released, did take time to break down what the budget looked like. We did have a representative here from budget who spoke to us that time before it was indeed signed into, of course, law, if you put it that way. But then again, let's take our time now to ask, what was Senator Ningi fighting for? And could it be that truly there's a 3.7 trillion naira just lying fallow somewhere in that budget? As journalists, our job is to look intently and do find the answers. And the business desk here on News Central decided to do that. So let's take some time and digest this package.
Yemi Adaramodu, chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Publicity, had said that entities like INEC, UBEC, Public Complaints Commission, National Judicial Council, NEDC and NDDC are the agencies that the disputed 3 trillion naira are budgeted for. He dismissed the issue of budget padding and emphasized that the claim of 500 million naira constituency funds to senators were baseless. However, Senator Abdul Ningi may not be entirely wrong, as his colleagues had indicated.
Appeal to Nigerians is not about what was said there today, because I'm not going to deny that. But we have 12 months to implement 2024 budget. Let every Nigerian wait to see whether there's any of these senators who will not bring enough boreholes, enough solar street lights, enough road construction, and other projects, training and empowerment that will be up to 500 million naira.
If there's anything, we agreed at that meeting, nobody will go to the press. I was asked to comment. I reluctantly comment. Let me use the word of Senator Abaribe. In the 9th Assembly, he will always say, I'm reluctantly agreeing to it. I reluctantly agreed to make a comment. And when I made a comment, I said, if anybody said he has seen anything, provide the evidence. Mr. President, we will deal with the issue of the Senate, of the budget, but we have to also deal with our ethical standard in the Senate.
This 3-point-something billion, trillion was not part of the budgetary provisions printed out for us. That would have settled this matter. We are going forth and back on these issues and coming up with issues of the budget and individual issues concerning what came to our various constituencies. If we want to go into those issues, all of us are culpable. Some senators here so-called senior senators got 500 million each. I am a ranking senator, I didn't get.
On his X platform, co-founder and director of budget Seun Onigbinde made several remarks in favor of and against Senator Ningi. The government-owned enterprises budget comprises approximately 2 trillion naira of the budget presented by the president, Onigbinde said. Therefore, the MDA's budget is 25 trillion naira. He hopes that if this is what Senator Ningi was referring to, then he will be correct.
Section 66. The President of the Senate or the Chairman, after having called the attention of the Senate or of the committee to the conduct of a senator who persists in irrelevance or tedious repetition, either of his own arguments or of the arguments used by other senators in debate, may direct him to discontinue his speech. That is 66(1). 66(2) also gives the Senate President the power to order the Sergeant at Arms to walk out such a senator.
Take your seat, take your seat, take your seat.
One issue that sticks out like a sore thumb is why the legislators should be at liberty to significantly alter an appropriation document by introducing items that were never planned for or provided for by the executive, who has the responsibility of preparing and executing the budget. Many Nigerians are still wondering why the issue came up at this time in the first place. Is it born out of sincere national interest or a case of sharing formula gone wrong?
Well, the conversations and the controversy continues, with regards to the allegations by Senator Ningi, the 3.7 trillion naira from the, last 2024 budget really had been, somehow, some way either padded. But, these questions would continue to be asked. We spoke yesterday about how the current National Assembly, has continued to, live with controversy right from day one. What steps will be taken? And of course, Nigerians have also questioned the speed with which Senator Ningi was suspended without any investigation into his claims. I did also make mention yesterday that I believe that proper details should have also maybe been given by Senator Ningi. Budget and its founder, Seun Onigbinde, in previous interviews, made mention that they didn't initially spot these lapses in the 2024 budget, but after X-raying it for about 24 hours, released more information about it, saying that there was no proper details for what 3.7 trillion naira was meant to be used for in the budget. So maybe Senator Ningi might be saying the truth, but there's a lot more conversations that have been birthed from this. But we'll take a look at it sometime today. Remember, to our viewers this morning, the phone lines are open. You can be a part of any conversation that we're having. Simply call the numbers that are going to be on your screen and share with us your thoughts on any parts of the conversation, from the student loan to the controversy with the National Assembly to, of course, the reopening of the borders with Niger. All right. The federal government has postponed the launch of the much-anticipated Nigerian Students' Loan Scheme indefinitely. This was conveyed by the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Education Loan Fund, Akintunde Sawyer, during an interview. The bill, which was proposed by former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, passed third reading in the lower chamber on May 23, 2023. But despite initial plans, the program's commencement was delayed, with President Tinubu announcing a new start date for January 2024 after missing the October deadline.
Well, in January, Minister of State for Education, Yusuf Sununu, confirmed that preparations, including the creation of the Student Loan Scheme website and program implementation planning, were completed. However, just 48 hours before the scheduled launch, Sawyer announced the postponement of the loan scheme due to ongoing corrections required before the launch. The National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS member, have expressed its disappointment, stated that it has lost hope in the federal government's education loan scheme. And that begs the question, who wouldn't? Well, joining us this morning, we do have Dean, Faculty of Social and Management Science, University of Berlin, Kerby. Thank you so much for being here, Professor Tuka Mohammed Baba. It's good to have you join us this morning.
Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be here.
All right, great. First off, let's get your viewpoint on the current situation concerning the student loan scheme. It was one of the one of the biggest anticipations, especially for students and Nigerians alike. Parents were also looking forward to send their children to school and eventually heave a sigh of relief when it comes to paying for the school fees and the likes. And now it has been postponed indefinitely. A date not yet given, but January 2024 mentioned, 2025, hopefully, I beg your pardon, or when. But then again, what's your take on this suspension or this complete loss of hope for students?
Let's start with the very principle of the policy, which is very good. Any support, financial especially to our students as they pursue tertiary education, is very good. To come to the postponement, if we can fast forward, it's a bit of a disappointment, but it's not surprising. In the sense that there is something invidious about this regime, this current APC government in power. That is to say, policies are released or announced without adequate background preparations as to their implementation. How, where, and so on. So when the postponement was announced, I was not surprised. There is a problem there. Of course, there was a rush to implement populist policies, even policies that are not good for the, well, I mean, at least they are very controversial for the populists. We make announcements, or rather the government makes announcements without adequate background preparations. If you ask me, the principle is very good, it's welcome, but it is disappointing that thoughts were not given to implementation, how, and so on. So this one that is now coming on board, that it has been postponed, a date will be announced, it's predictable. Yeah, you can predict that this will happen because there was no adequate preparations. Sometimes we rush to copy what is going on in other countries, forgetting the other factors that are available that form the context of those policies. In Nigeria, in order to implement such schemes, you need to prepare very well. How is it going to be implemented, and so on? So, in short, the principle is good. The announcement is a disappointment. 3, it is not surprising, because this is characteristics of this regime. Remember the brouhaha regarding the fuel subsidy, which was announced without adequate preparation. What do you call it? Distribution of 5 billion naira palliative to states nationwide was quickly announced. There was no preparation of how. I mean, how are you going to implement it? On what basis are you doing the allocation? And especially if you do it so evenly, everyone gets 5,000, 5 billion. On the basis of land, on the basis of population, and so on. These were not done. So this is the major disappointment against every intention of this government. If one would prefer to see adequate preparation on implementation, this is so that the general public like you and I will contribute. Yes, you want to do this, but there is this. Yeah. And so these are my thoughts.
All right. Well, I did have a similar argument earlier, that it's a government that focuses, mostly on propaganda and, how it can sell itself instead of actually doing, what needs to be done. It's figuring out ways that they can sell good stories about themselves every day. But, I want to ask, you repeatedly said it's a good, idea. But is Nigeria really even ready for that? And if we have 5, 10, 15 billion that we were willing to invest in the student loan, wouldn't you also argue that we maybe could have redirected those funds and even more into, making our universities better first, before looking for, or giving people loans to go to those same universities? We currently have a seemingly very deplorable educational system. It's not in its best shape. So shouldn't we be redirecting those funds into fixing our university system, educational system, before we start giving out loans.
Well, there is no doubt about that. You know, earlier, if you remember, I said if we're going to borrow such schemes which exist in places like the United States, Britain, and others, we needed to have prepared adequately for it, because the general context of the societies are different. If you ask me, I would have preferred a situation where the federal government will determine the tuition fees in at least the public schools and abolish the tuition fees for the payment of tuition fees by students and pay the fees directly to the universities, and then set up a committee that will be monitoring the utilization of the funds by the universities. Meanwhile, the students pay zero fees, or for that matter, some token fee. So it's like other policies. Instead of throwing money, maybe we should improve infrastructure. Instead of making announcements, maybe we should make available drugs in hospitals, so that when the ordinary man in the street goes to the hospital, they know they don't have to worry about the cost of drugs. And I would have loved to see that for the universities and other tertiary institutions, that the facility is available free to the students, or at the very minimal fee. But then there is a monitoring to see how these funds are utilized. And the universities must submit plans. These are what the government is giving you in lieu of payment of fees by the students. What are you going to do with it? How will it improve conditions in the university? How will it make learning conducive for the students so that they are stress-free, not to worry? In a lot of the universities, at least that I know of, I have heard that there is a slow process of registration because a lot of the fees being imposed now cannot be afforded by the students. So, you know, people are looking for money, and I agree with you that this money should have been utilized should have been given direct to the universities with adequate preparations for, and then, you know, for monitoring. We are giving this university 500 million, like I heard has been given to some senators. How will you use it? This is in lieu of fees that you will charge Nigerian students. How will you utilize the fees to make learning conducive, classrooms, facilities, and so on? Obviously, when you throw money at a problem, just like that, then there is a danger that the person you throw the money into has no capacity to utilize it rationally. Then there is a problem. Yeah. And this is what I want this country to move away from, throwing money at problems. You see, psychologically, it is an established fact that when you give people suddenly a lot of wealth, they are not prepared to manage it. It's the same thing when people who are wealthy suddenly find themselves at the bottom of the poverty line. There is a problem. So careful planning. How do we utilize this money? In what areas should they be deployed? Do we have a monitoring committee for monitoring and evaluation? And then, of course, holding people responsible, accountability. So this is what I would have preferred to say. In short, I agree with you. It's better deployed by the government to specific actions and plans.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could also have both of them, you know, working side by side. I mean, you could, you know, deploy more money to the educational sector and, you know, improve on the quality of universities that we have, while at the same time have your student loan. But, you know, unfortunately, this one has turned out. But does this also paint a picture for you about what we prioritize as a country? You know, and how education, you know, is maybe not one of the government's biggest priorities. And that's why they can, you know, play this kind of propaganda with it.
Well, it's unfortunate that there is more propaganda than actual action by governments. And this is disappointing. But at the same time, you see, I think in the background, we need to probably pity the government. There is much expectation from the populace. What you do is to hold back, plan. Such investments take time to manifest. In education, for example, what I think will happen is addressing the infrastructural problems, most importantly. Then rationalize access. Who should go to the universities and so on, under what conditions? You address them. If you don't do that, chances are you are going to be running in all directions, what is called shambolic. As soon as this issue comes, you rush and throw money at it. As another issue comes, you run and throw money at it. You lose the big picture. So, in short, I think the problems are not totally irredeemable. The government needs to go back. Forget about propaganda. Think and focus on impact. How do you achieve the impact? By doing things correctly, by doing things rationally, by taking the government, the public alone in the debate. It's not just to sit down in Abuja, in Osarogie and say, oh, okay, we'll give students loan. Oh, okay, we will feed students in school. And then you don't look around and say, what exactly does that mean? So this is the problem with this government, and of course with many governments that are more concerned with propaganda. But in the educational sector, for example, when you do that, you do not expect results in 6 months. You do not expect to see visible impact in 1 year, 2 years, and so on. It takes about 5 to 10 years, but it needs patience. It needs careful planning. It needs a rational allocation of resources and so on. Most people, when they see you doing this methodically, step by step, systematic, even if the impact is not there, people will say, oh, yes, this will take about 5 to 10 years, and so on. For example, let's begin from basic education. Any plans you have on ground now, we will see the visible allocation of resources, but we should take about 12 years to see what is the impact in terms of enrollment, in terms of graduation, and so on. So what the government should do instead of rushing project is to take the public along, sit down and have a program in place so that people can follow. Well, 1, infrastructure; 2, improve other conditions, laboratories, and so on; 4, make access available; 5, within 3 to 6 months, we will make sure all broken down furniture and equipment are repaired, and so on, so that nobody will have an argument that this has not been done, this has not been done. But right now, what you are doing is you are running in all directions. With regards to the student loan, like I said, I support the government that any financial assistance, but please, finances are limited in every society. So when you deploy public resources, do it systematically, step by step, and do it such that at every stage you are monitoring the impact of the interventions that you throw.
Yeah, right. So, all right. Permit me to. I think we've spoken. I mean, I'm just looking at our time, and since we've touched on the student loan, I'd also like to get your thought on the recent happenings, especially at the Senate. Permit me to deviate a bit. You're also a spokesperson for the Arewa Consultative Forum. What's your thought on the recent happening at the Senate, especially with the Senator Ningi, who has been suspended? And we're talking about the 3.7 trillion naira padding. I mean, you wouldn't come on this show and we would let you go without getting your input on that.
Fair enough. This is a public debate. First of all, let me make it clear I'm speaking for myself as a public analyst, especially as a scholar in the universities. To go directly to the issue, you spoke of you have limited time. Let me say this. My disappointment at the happenings in the Senate regarding this issue is more that we are focusing on the messenger rather than the message. This is the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There should be robust debate on policies. There should be robust debates on the budget allocations. There should be a rugged defense debate on what should be done. But when you rush, what we say, ad hominem, you focus on the messenger. The messenger shouldn't have spoken. For God's sake, this is a democratic regime headed by the president, by name, Senator, now His Excellency Bola Tinubu. Let's go back. He made his impact on national politics by engaging in robust debate. Remember, he emerged, we first up about him from the movement against the military. And every one of us was there. So why do we stop people from talking? It's rather disappointing, as I hear. Oh, the Senator Ningi should not have spoken, or this is something else, or he got it wrong, or what of other northerners who are quiet, and so on. You are focusing on the messenger, and you forget the bigger picture. If Senator Ningi spoke about the allocation, unexplained allocation of 3.7 billion, I don't expect you to start abusing Senator Ningi. I don't expect you to suspend him, because a philosopher once said, if a system stops you from asking questions, there is something it doesn't want you to find out. So you ask me, it's a bit disappointing. I would have preferred to see concentration on the issue. The general public should be told, was there any budget padding or not? Was there any allocation of unexplained, allocation to money to unexplained resources or not? If after you establish the fact, you find that Senator Ningi, or any senator for that matter, like the senator who said some senators got 500 million naira, and I looked at some of the allocations of funds. It seems to me that the Senate, the legislature, is going into policy implementation, which in political theory, basic political theory, will say that tends to spoil the concept of the separation of powers. Why do legislators go into policy implementation with specific projects? If in fact they want constituency project, I would expect they allow the executive to do that. And they are engaged in monitoring. They are engaged in seeing to it that there is a rational allocation of resources by the executive. But when a senator or any legislator for that matter goes into having specific allocations, and I have seen allegations on on social media, that some senators were asked to provide contractors who will supply grains, who will supply equipment. To me, this is the function of the legislature. This is the function of the executive, not the legislature. When a legislator begins to be interested in contracts, in contractors, and so on, and I think we're losing the essence of the separation.
I also want to ask,
and then we lose. What we lose is a robust debate on this policy. So people are concentrate on their contractors and so on. This is disappointment. This is a disappointment.
Just before we have you, or we wrap up, I also want you to speak with regards, same issue, but Senator Okwemi Bamidele from, I think is representing Ekiti Central Senatorial District, basically blaming it on a tribal issue. I think it was saying that northern senators, you are trying to remove or have always ganged up against a Senate president from the southern part of the country. And, that might be what is played out here with the allegations that there might be an impeachment plot against the current Senate president. So is Senator Bamidele making, some sense from your perspective?
Well, under Nigerian politics, maybe at the populist level. But again, this is another disappointment. The impeachment or removal of the principal officers of legislatures, whether at the national level, at the state level, or at the local government level, has always been part of us. Then, of course, the allegation that is based on regional considerations. tribal considerations. I'm surprised they have not even added religious considerations. These are part of my earlier listening. You are concentrating on the messenger rather than the message. So that even if there is no messenger, you invent, you create it, because in Nigeria, this is what makes an immediate impact. All these primordial factors, when you launch on them, of course, then people focus on that rather than on the policies. I will expect the distinguished senator to address exactly the allegations. I mean, this Nigerian Senate leadership has always suffered from these changes, impeachments and so on. Right from 1999, you go back the line, Chuba Okadipo, the gentleman with multiple certificates and so on. These are part of it. Some of the spokesmen of the present government were there in opposition, pointed out. I remind you about the presidential media strategies. Its role during the saga of Buhari, the young man from Kano who falsified his age, his qualifications, and so on. So when you resort to saying it's regional, it's tribal, and so on, well, let's ask questions. Were there these regional and tribal factors in allocating resources? Were there controversies regarding the alleged distribution of 500 million naira to some senators? Was it based on this? This is what a late historian, Bola, said is the manipulation of these factors, religion, tribe, region, for selfish reasons by our politicians. So when you point out that, hey, why are you doing this? Because, it's on tribal factors and so on, then you forget the larger picture. It's a disappointment. In my opinion, it's time this country, our politicians, our policymakers, and then policy analysts move away from this romantic attachment to primordial sentiments and so on. If there is a plot by any group of people, deal with that. What are the reasons for the plot? Can it be addressed? Is there any veracity in what is being said, rather than say, oh, don't say it because you are from Akwa Ibom. Don't say it because you are from Sokoto. Don't say it because you people in Taraba are religion and so on. No. Let's address the issue. But again, like I said, I'm not surprised. The manipulation of primordial sentiments have always been one of the basic problems of our society. That's why we are not making much progress, or rather we are not making as much progress as you and I ordinarily expect. So it's a disappointment. If there is a tribal or regional vision, address the issues. Show us out. Don't just give it the level. Like one of the presidential spokesmen said recently, that the banditry is because some national groups. For God's sake, this is a presidential system. If there is anybody that you can identify that is sabotaging the progress of the nation, that is causing confusion, causing banditry through killing and abduction of their own people, please, this is a presidential system. Identify them, deal with them. It's not just to make bland general statements that we are against, like I teach in the university. And students would say, you gave me an F. And I gently say, I didn't give you an F. You scored an F.
Thank you so much, Professor Tuka. Very interesting conversation we've had here for this hour. I want to thank you for your time and most importantly for sharing your thoughts with us on matters arising. Thank you. The front pages of the newspapers is up next. You can be part of this by calling the phone number on the screen to react to the stories that we will be taking and some of the stories we've been talking about from the first hour. Let's bring in our guest who joins us. We do have CKN in the house. Thank you so much for being here this morning. You're looking, I don't know if I should say, Nakedu.
Good morning. It's nice to be here this morning.
Great. Let's not waste time. Let's go straight to the story. So much to talk about this morning from the papers. This Nigeria is the first. Wike promises improved security, more infrastructure for FCT residents. I did see him grant interviews to some of the journalists. He said some of the insecurity issues are what they cannot deal with, and they are domesticated. Anyway, we'll talk about later on. No payment of ransom to kidnappers, Tinubu direct security agencies. Ningi, Southern senators move to check alleged excesses of Northern colleagues. Revive forum, where for unity of all parts of the country, not just South, says Abiru. Bauchi Governor Mohammed backs suspended senator. So a few governors and few senators are starting to raise their tiny voices to say, it's like we're supporting you. Yeah, but they didn't say it there and in the House. Please, let's start off with the drama in the Senate. What's your take on that, Ningi and Senator Ningi and the likes?
First of all, we need to establish the fact that this is not the first time we are hearing stories and stories of pardon and no pardon. This has been there since 1999, and I'm sure you're aware of that. I remember vividly the one that happened, I don't know which time, whether the 8th Senate or whichever one, where also a House of Rep member from Kano, that vocal guy, raised some issues, and I think he was suspended for some time or whatever. But this has always been the pattern, where the members of the legislative arm, the National Assembly, used the opportunity to be able to put in, add up to whatever. According to the presidency, it was 27.7 or 55 trillion that was sent to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly, in its own wisdom, added under 1.2 trillion, making a total of about 28.5 trillion, and that was what was passed. Unlike what Senator Ningi initially stated, that it was 25 trillion that was sent to the Assembly and that was passed. But it's neither here nor there, but the fact remains that some people, some organizations, even if you listen to what Budget IC just came out with, and they'll be able to confirm that what Ningi was saying is right. And that was them. And that is an independent organization. But I would rather, what I would feel I feel that Ningi should do now is to now bring whatever evidence he has to the public domain. Should send it to media houses, should send it to journalists like us. Let us look at it and see some of the line by line, some of this, because in this part of the world they say there's no smoke without fire. But when it comes to issue of figures, it's not something that you can hide. Yeah. It's always there. So we can take an item by item. There are areas that but there are, well, I don't think there was anybody that actually, during the debate, that actually took Ningi on what he said. What they are only fighting was just the procedure. That ordinarily he ought to have, he has avenues of passing the information rather than just going to an international medium like the BBC to raise a bet. The guy has been suspended, but this is not the end of the story. And it is high time we start looking at the activities. I just came back from Abuja just yesterday. I was at the National Assembly and I spoke with for my program, Inside Politics CK, and I spoke with some members of the National Assembly. And one of the issues I raised with them was on the issue of this constituency project stuff that you guys are always. One of the senators, Abaribe, was on national TV yesterday. I'm sure you must have seen it, yes, where he actually said, yes, even for my constituency, I get about 240 billion. Is it million? 66 million. Yes, 666 million. Yes, that he got 246 million for his own. But what they've always said, they hide under the guise that, oh, yes, this money is located to our constituency, but it's not given to us. It's given to certain organizations to be able to, ours is just identify the projects and execute it. And I ask, how would they execute a project in your own zone without your input? And we know how these things roll. Most of the time, they are the ones that provide the contractors. And when you get the contractors, of course, you get your own cut from out of the contractors. But the issue, let us stick on this, and this shouldn't be the last of this. Let us prove further whether some of the things that was raised by Ningi. But if it's not true, then I think that Ningi needs to come back and also apologize to his colleagues. That is my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, like you've said, they also didn't give any chance for these things to be x-rayed before he was suspended. There were also other revelations, of course, those claiming that they received 500 million, those saying that they didn't receive enough, some of them saying they received cars, the others did not receive. It just seems like the main focus of the National Assembly has been shifted, and now what they really have spent most of the time doing there in the current National Assembly has just been allocating funds to themselves or not. Quickly also speak on the president saying no payment of ransom to kidnappers. Sheikh Gumi once again volunteered himself to be Nigeria's chief negotiator between kidnappers and the country.
It's a broken record, of course. It's a broken statement. If it's something that we've had over and over and over again. Government say they will not negotiate with this thing. At the end of it, or they go through the back and negotiate. It was Governor Nasir El-Rufai who raised the ante some years back when he said he went to negotiate, had a discussion with the terrorists or whatever. But the problem is that even after negotiation, do you get what you want? And that's it. It's neither here nor there. There's no country in the world, no matter whatever they say, either United States, Israel, or whatever, that don't go into negotiation with it. But they don't come out openly to say that. You see what is going on between the Hamas and the Israelis with the war that is going on in Gaza. There's a lot of negotiation going on. You see Egypt trying to mediate, Qatar trying to mediate. All those things are part of negotiation, and how to exchange prisoners or whatever. It happens all over the world. So I don't think my own is that I think they should just start working through the back door without bringing this into the public. You don't need to tell us that you're not going to negotiate. That is not the job of government. Ours is get these kids out. Whichever way you do it is neither here nor there for me. But for you to come and bold yourself and say, oh, let us also look at it from the point that how many Chibok girls were kidnapped, were picked years back, about 9 years now. All of those kids are not back now. About 200 women were also picked up from Borno, from the ID camps. Nobody said anything about it. After the initial 200 pupils, they moved to another point, I think, I don't know, wherever, and pick another set of today. And I'm just asking, are we back to pre-2015 days again? Because this thing, if you remember vividly, we are a country that is short in memory in terms of history. We easily forget. Yeah. Yeah. People have forgotten what we went through. And it's the same pattern that is going on. This was what happened during the Goodluck Jonathan days. Yeah, there was some level of terrorism, PK, kidnapping, and the rest of them during the Buhari. But it wasn't as much as this. You remember what happened in Chibok? You remember what happened in Dapchi? You remember that Dapchi as well? Yeah. So all this happened, and I just asked, is there a political theory to all this? I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but the fact is that whichever way that the government can be able to make sure that these children or this guy that were kidnapped, all well and good. But the fact remains that the most important aspect is that, are we not dropping the ball? What are the security agencies doing? Is Intel not failing?
I mean, it really shows that between 2014 and now, there's been no improvement.
Nothing. We've learned nothing. They say they come up with the safe school program that all schools there is thing that they're going to deploy civil defense to all these schools, and when they say that, I laugh. How many civil defense officers do you have that are going to? The fact is that we are not doing the right thing. All over the world, schools, they are vulnerable. There are people you call the vulnerable, and they are the easiest of target. Number one are children, two are women. Yeah. So the essence of every governance or government is the protection of life and property, and any government that cannot be able to do that is as good as not being there. Yeah. So if you cannot protect yourself and ask, how come these people come and pick away over 200 children at once?
And that's the thing, because this is not just a school problem. Some of them were taken from IDP camps. Yes. So logistics to move them, the 200 people, and for hours they did that, and no security apparatus, nobody moving to be able to save the situation. There's a lot of questions to be answered. Just to remind our viewers, the phones are active this morning. You can join the conversation. Let us know your thoughts on these stories. But I said yesterday that while we are, and this is maybe the most sickening part of Nigeria's conversations, that while we are going through Senator Ningi and Senator Bamidele and the Senate President and all of that, we have certainly forgotten that there's 300 people that are in captivity.
Of course.
That story and the lives of those people has been pushed aside so that we can banter and discuss senators arguing amongst themselves over budget padding.
And I just think that at times some of these things could be deliberate. That's my personal opinion. it could be deliberate on the part of maybe political class to just shift our attention from the main subjects. But there is no country in the world, even in Russia, what is it now? You have Ukraine, that you see about 300 or 500 people being picked and nothing. Look at what is happening in Haiti presently, where you are seeing all sorts of manner of this thing. Yeah. The attention of the world. But have you seen that the attention of the world is definitely out of Nigeria, especially when it comes to issue of insecurity? But because they come to look at it as a daily occurrence, it doesn't make any. Yeah. Most of this news doesn't make headlines in international media any longer because they've come to see it as a norm. It's no known news for you to hear that 100 people were killed in Nigeria, 500 were kidnapped by terrorists and the rest of them. Nobody, the world doesn't pay attention to that again. And that is worrisome to me. In some countries, if one single person is picked or killed,
everywhere,
the whole country, the country will be shut down. The country will be shut down. The instance is that when three soldiers or military guys were killed in Iraq a few days ago, President Biden was at the airport to receive those 3 corpses. 3. I don't want to use the word just 3. He was there. That is how important the pill value to life. But here we don't. It doesn't matter. Those are the ones that you know on a daily basis people are getting kidnapped on the roads. Along Lagos, Kineko to Benin, Kaduna. Nobody's even talking about that again. Yeah. Because it has become part. One of our colleagues was recently kidnapped on his way to Abuja. He was kidnapped and he was with them for over 2 weeks. And just recently if you hear the story of that young man, you pity this country. Right.
The daily independent newspapers, let's share what we can find over there. Remember, the phones are active. You could join us at any time. It says there, splashed on your screen, don't pay ransom to free Kaduna 280 abductees, says President Tinubu. Task security operatives to bring them back home safely. Swears in 17 NPC commissioners. Also this morning, Bauchi governor back suspended Ningi, vows to probe allegation. Budget confirms Abdul Ningi's assertion. Suspension hasn't addressed vital questions, says Peter Obi. Commercial services, again, NCAA threatens to revoke licenses of private jet owners. I'm just trying to take as many of them as we can. PDP carpets Akpabi over 3.7 trillion naira budget pardon, Ningi's suspension. No plan to discard student loan scheme indefinitely, says the presidency. And also, federal government reopens land and air borders with Niger Republic and lifts sanctions. All right, I think we can squeeze in your thoughts on 2 stories here. The student loan and, of course, the Niger border reopening and the lifting of the sanctions after a few months. Well,
the loan scheme for me was dead on arrival as far as I'm concerned. There was no concerted effort to be able to put all the necessary impetus into place to be able to actualize this. And you continue to ask yourself, why is it was able to? If you look at I think it was just part of the promises made by the president during his campaign. I just felt that it's necessary for me to just focus some of these campaign promises. But it's one thing to make a statement, but when it gets to implementation, it becomes a problem. So I'm not surprised that has been, because when you look at how it was going to be disbursed, the repayment plans and the rest of them, you just realize that. So for it to have, but it's a failure for me because at this point in time, I thought that was being a window of opportunity for some people, those that cannot be able to, for parents that cannot be able to afford school fees for now to be able to take opportunity of that window. It is done all over the world. If you go to the United States, most of the students in schools are going through loans. They collect loans, you know, and it's spread across. When you get your job, you start paying back. That is how most of them go to school, even the United Kingdom and the rest of them. There used to be a loan scheme in Nigeria. There used to be the loan board. I never benefited. I'm sure you didn't benefit from that. The nearest I ever benefited was, what do they call that one? This one that they used to give us then. I think once I got maybe 300 naira or whatever from my state government. Bursary, it was bursary. That was my youth service period. And we were given 300 and that was it. I had to go to my village, get all the papers, get all the SZ to sign everything. By the time I finished going to my village and coming back, the whole money that I was supposed to be given has been spent there. But for that, I don't think, I don't see anything be better. They say it's suspended. Suspending is not totally been scrapped. So probably they're looking at the necessary logistics and modalities to be able to put in place and see how that goes. I want to talk about also, I think there was one of the headlines.
The Niger Republic border.
Yeah, the Niger Republic. And the question is, what did we achieve by closing the border? That is the question you ask yourself. Have we achieved the result? Because we galvanized other West African countries to do it because our president was the chairman of ECOWAS, and that was right. But we saw that this thing has snowballed to a situation where we cannot even handle it again. The guys have threatened to, in fact, they've left ECOWAS according to them. And the ECOWAS head of state dropped the ball. I don't think there was proper negotiation with the junta. There was no proper negotiation. There was communication. There was total communication breakdown. You came and say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Without diplomacy goes just beyond. Diplomacy is an art. It's not something you just jump into and start making statements. There are a way of going about such. But now I think after how many months they realized their mistake and they will. But even at that, you know our closeness to Niger Republic. So people already, especially our brothers from the north, they've been kicking. And so even the governors, they've been kicking. Open this, and as if that if you don't open the border, that is it. After all, the semi border was closed. The semi border here was closed for how many months? The heavens didn't fall. But you come to it, my problem is that we're having serious food shortage in the country. We are talking about petrol. Are you just in the past few days how many food load of trailers and trucks they are leaving Nigeria to some of these neighboring countries, taking away food that are not that is not even available in Nigeria. So opening the border for me might even be able to worsen the situation. Not only the border have been opened, I just read this morning that we are restoring light to Niger Republic, and I've not had light for 2 days in my own house. So if I don't have light too, if my government cannot provide me with light for 2 days, how come we are not giving light to a country like Niger Republic? When we don't have enough, we are just playing around 5,000 megawatts. For a country of about 220 million people, does it make sense?
I don't even think it's up to 5,000.
I just want to give them this thing because it's only between 4,000 and 3,000, and we have seen the systematic collapse going on in the past few weeks. Then we also want to know. I don't know where are they getting the one they are giving to Niger Republic? Where are they getting from? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me.
I have no idea. No idea. So I like us to put up. Although it's not part of the Daily Independent, but it's an exact explainer from the leadership where they explained the possibility of moving that huge number of students, pupils, and how they did that possibility. So if they used an Okada, they would have used 144.
Imagine.
Okada.
Yes. If
they used a keke napep, they would have used, that's what we call, that's tricycle,
yes,
72.
72.
If they used taxis, 57 of them, and it would take 57.4, that's 57 persons. If you share it by 57, that's where you get that about 280 students kidnapped. If they used a coaster bus,
they need 21.
That would be 10, a highest bus 21.
Yes.
And then if they used the airplane,
yes.
5.
So that is what you see. You know, I raised the question. I say how the logistics in moving these children, how did they move them? How? Okay, let's assume that they use Okada, 144 Okada to pick them. So how they will line up like this for hours and be moving, or how did?
One of the survivors said they actually lined up. I came out that they lined them up like, you know, when they're moving the cows. And that's where she gained the opportunity to sneak out and run away. That's what she said, that they lined them up. So from the moment when they were kidnapped and they were being taken away, the security was not alerted. The drones were not flying to spot them. There's a lot.
I wouldn't agree. I don't think it's logical for anyone to even say it, that they are missing and nobody knows where they are. I don't think, you know, that would be, anybody can convince me that the Nigerian government completely has zero idea where these people who have been kidnapped have been taken to. I think the people who know those regions well enough would maybe have an idea where these people are. It is the steps that will be taken to free them from the kidnappers that, you know, we're not very sure of. You know, and then maybe, you know, it might also be an opportunity for us to dig deeper into what exactly is playing out here, you know, that maybe we're not being told.
Yeah.
You know, what makes it easier? What gives these people the audacity to simply walk in and take away 300 people, knowing that they would not be challenged and, you know, nothing will happen?
As I said, it's the same pattern. It has happened and happened. This is not the first time it's happening. So if this is the pattern, then the government should know. They know the pattern. If you can just walk in and just surrender a school and pick up over 200 students and just move them. And let me tell you this, there is no local government in this country where you don't have a police station. None. The 774. Some have two. So what are we talking? There is no local government in this country that you don't have DSS officers. There is no local government in this country that you don't have civil defense officers. They are all posted. In fact, it goes to a point that even NIA, once in a while, you have secret police also posted here. Yeah. So I'm saying that how come that these children there was this attack, nobody heard about it, or if they heard about it, what did they do?
Yeah. That's what I was asking about, you know.
The Commissioner of Police have not come out to tell us what happened. The DSS director in that, because for each of the state there is a state director. DSS director has not come to tell us what happened. Those in the NIA and civil defense have not done that. Then other agencies, there are other agencies, smaller agencies. Even the local vigilantes within those areas, what did they do? And that comes to the issue of state policing, as we've said, localized policing. It is high time we start looking at this option very, very, very well. And I say it, intelligence, very, very key. Before these guys move, some people must have known that they were within the surroundings. Some people have seen them. How come that they were not able to reach up to security agencies and say, this is what we are seeing? But the problem is that trust deficit I will let's talk about. And that is an issue. If there's this trust deficit, I don't know. If I don't trust the police, that whatever information I give you, you cannot use it.
Hold on. Let's speak with Shola from Lagos. Good morning, Shola.
Hello, morning. How are you?
Morning, welcome. Go ahead.
I think it's very important that Nigerians begin to see what has been clamoring for the past.
Sorry, Shola, can you speak up? We can barely hear you.
I think it's important that Nigerians begin to see what we've been clamoring for the past almost 2 decades. We have a leadership that cares, that has zero knowledge of what it means to, what human life is. I feel it's important that if we can have or call on these our leaders to look at the Western world. I heard your analyst make mention of the United States, the president who was at the airport to receive those that were killed in Iraq or something. That tells you a government that has placed value on human life. Because at the end of the day, if all these kidnappings happen every now and then, and these bandits end up killing the entire Nigeria, who will Abuja, who could be President Tinubu, who all these senators, who will they be leading? Who are the people that will probably do business, that will generate all of this money they are all there squandering? Let's not even talk about the Senate leaders. Abuja already knows his attitude. Abuja is not someone that you can trust with funds. We all look at the sitting Senate president, you couldn't call for a probe. Okay, you have made substantial allegations. Can we investigate? At the end of the investigation, you can now come to a conclusion and say, okay, you lied. Senator, the former governor of Kaduna State, or Adam, he said, and I'm trying to paraphrase, that the Senate has been stripped naked.
All right.
The Senate has been stripped naked. And you should be ashamed of yourself as a Senate president. All of this is happening under his watch, and the best he could do is to suspend Mingi.
Okay.
Honestly, we have a long way to go.
Thank you, Shola. Thank you for your points. Thank you. I mean, great points there, and well noted. Well noted. Let's put it that way. This is a conversation that will continue round the clock, and you can trust us here on News Central. We'll definitely continue this conversation. I want to say thank you to our guest, CKN, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We do understand that our next guest is also in line to speak to us, and we do have Mr. Oluseun Onigbinde, Budget Foundation, who's on queue, ready to talk to us. And we'll be talking about the 3.7 trillion naira, and that's exactly what we'll be looking at. Okay? But then again, it's good to have you join us. First off, let me say good morning to you.
So how are you doing? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Very well. I know you're starting off with a smile. It seems like we all know what the pulse of Nigerians is indeed saying or reading. Anyway, following the allegations and counter-allegations around the budget padding and so on, you have spoken, and you spoke initially when the budget was indeed released by the presidency before it was signed. A little thing here and there was picked. One of it was the office of the First Lady. The monies allocated to that. The monies for the car. We do remember the all-important, obnoxious, the yacht as well. But here we are, a brand new one. 3.7 trillion naira is in the talks. I'm going to start off with my very first question to you this morning. Can you take us through what the controversy really is?
Thanks so much. And I think the controversy is from the idea, the proposition by the Senator Abduningi that 3.7 trillion naira has been padded into the budget. And that's a certain amount of money that they cannot account for is in the budget. And he made that proposition and saying that within maybe the National Assembly leadership, they understand what those funds will be used for. We got into action. We sat down and analyzed the budget, and we checked, is this a true situation if we look into it properly? We found out that that was not fully true. One, the position that we run two budgets, that we run 25 trillion naira budget and a 28 trillion naira budget, that is not true. A component of the budget is specifically dedicated for MDAs, that's ministries, departments, and agencies. But another component of the budget is for GOEs, which is the government-owned enterprises, and the statutory bodies. So that's the other component of the budget. The statutory bodies, which is around 3.2 trillion naira, the budget breakdown for the approved are not made public. So maybe that is one he has the poor understanding of. So I don't think it's true. The padding allegation, I don't find it as true. But on the fact that some of these items do not have a breakdown, I think to some extent, yes, on those points, Senator Abduningi was right. And the other part is also to look at the insertions into the budget, some of which has cropped up again. The several items were being inserted into the budget. And we also validated that around 2.28 trillion naira was inserted a different item indiscriminately into the budget. We've analyzed that. We've brought out a publication that is available on our website for people to see. Budget website is called budget.org, for people to see projects that were inserted into the project by members of the National Assembly, and they can either query them, question them, and also ensure that those projects are completed. A lot of those projects are not put in areas where they can be properly delivered or where they can be properly implemented. And so those are the questions Senator Abduningi read, and I think I don't find the suspension by the National Assembly, I don't find it justified. If he made an error in the numbers, or maybe when he was bringing numbers together, those things should be explained to him. But to go ahead and suspend, I don't think that's fair in the spirit of accountability.
Okay, well, it's not new. The claims of budget padding. Maybe that's why a lot of Nigerians aren't necessarily even shocked, or surprised, by this. But can you speak a little bit more about these items? I remember I watched the interview you had a couple of days ago where you said there are certain parts of the budget, that, the figures are a little vague, certain aspects of it that you cannot necessarily interrogate to the detail what those funds will be used for. And maybe that's where these hundreds of billions or trillions of naira, are snuck in. So can you, share a little bit more about that? And also, the revelations of constituency projects, 266 million, 500 million, and the likes, aren't those things that we should, get rid of?
Yeah, two things. One is the what they call statutory transfers that you call first-line charges. And those things are created to protect them from fluctuating government revenues or to protect their independence. For example, you don't want the judiciary to be waiting on the executive to receive their funds, or the legislature to be waiting on the executive to be waiting for their funds. So they created these first-line charge items that at least they get some level of priority. The unfortunate part is that immediately they created these first-time charge items. These items, the details are not made public, like UBEC, like NDDC, like TED Fund, like the National Assembly, like National Judicial Council. All of these agencies should have detailed line by line, so that Nigerians can properly interrogate them. And they should also be adhered to the budget that is presented to the public. So that's the first thing. And this is an advocacy that's been going on for over the years. The statutory transfers specifically do not have details, and Nigerians are not able to question them. And I think it is right for Senator Abducted to say you cannot just pass a budget without details. These agencies or these institutions should have the detail, and we should be able to see them. And they should be added to the budget. I mean, it should be a 28.77 trillion naira budget with full details. That's one. The second part of things is also about this constituency project. Previously, and up to like 2016, National Assembly had 100 billion naira for constituency project. And there was a bit of limit into what National Assembly members introduced into the budget. They could adjust existing projects that have been proposed by the executive. So if the executive says, we're doing Lagos-Ibadan Express Road for 100 billion, they could say, okay, do it for 80 billion or do it for 120 billion. That was a practice that was known to most Nigerians. And the National Assembly had 100 billion naira to now interrogate or to now deliver projects in their constituency, which was decent enough. Now, what you now get is National Assembly members have gone beyond looking into the budget of the constituency project and now inserting things into the PMDA's budget for their own constituency. So it's a question of maybe how close you are to the senator, the power you wield over who is leading that agency. That is what it has become. They now have even what you call special budget centers, like the Federal Cooperative College or G-River, National Productivity Center. All of those places, the National Assembly members put in items into those agencies for their own constituencies. And now that's now gone. So even the 100 billion constituency project does not make sense anymore. That has now risen as high as 2.28 trillion naira into the budget. So if you look at the budget was raised by 1.2 trillion naira to 7 trillion naira. They reduced around 900 billion from the GOE's budget, and they now got 2.2 trillion naira worth of projects to insert into the budget. And the executive has not pushed back on that. And what we are seeing now is that looks like people are even trying to introduce their family problems into the budget. That's how ridiculous things have become. And some of them are solar lanterns, solar street lights, boreholes, and things like that. And one is wondering, what is the immediate value of things like this? So there has to be questions that are needed to be answered. The National Assembly is going to what I call a legislative overreach, and it will have significant implications for the country.
It seems like every year we're starting to see more drama unfold, especially with the budget. And like we've said, this is not new. But it seems this time there's a searchlight regarding what is really going on. Maybe if we want to use the word to say that Nigerians have all of a sudden woken up and are more determined to ask more questions. One of the questions that many are looking to ask currently has got to do with the school, the loan, of course, the loan scheme. I'm sure you're also aware that it has been postponed indefinitely. The figures were definitely also part of what we saw in the appropriation bill. Now that it has been postponed, is there any way that budget can identify what could happen to that student loan scheme? And I don't know if you can recall as well, the funds that were initially to be used for the yacht was said that it would be moved to the student loan scheme. And then later on, it was said that the yacht had already been purchased.
Bought.
Thank you. Can you help us, just to pose these two? Where are we going now with this budget?
Yeah, I mean, if you check the 2024 budget that was signed into law, 50 billion naira was approved for the takeoff of the student loan scheme. And I guess we're expecting that immediately. We're in the third month now, so the budget is currently in implementation. We expect that some of those funds should have been released. I don't know what is accounting for the delay. The student loan scheme was promised by the president in his manifesto. So if there are things that he should have paid intense attention to at the beginning of his term, that should have been part of it. And if you look at the budget of 28.77 trillion, 50 billion naira is not a lot of money. I mean, the government is budgeting almost 20 billion naira to rehabilitate the building in the federal government state house in Lagos. I mean, the former Dodam Barracks, or whatever we call it now. So, I mean, so to say 50 billion for the entire students of Nigeria for a loan scheme, that doesn't sound huge in my own view.
We may have lost.
Okay, I think you might have to unmute yourself again, if you can hear us. Mr. Nigude, can you hear us? Oh, okay. Just a little technical glitch there with the audio, but we're looking forward to that explanation. So can you try to unmute yourself again, and possibly let's see if we can hear you.
No?
Okay, all right. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was saying that the student loan scheme needs, it will happen in my own view, but maybe they need of time in terms of delivering it properly. And I think that's one of the challenges for this government. A whole lot of policies are rolled out, but I don't think a lot of thinking has gone into it. Maybe they don't want to make mistakes. We've had first subsidy, exchange rate, parity, the expatriate levy, a lot of policies that we start, we stop, we slow down, we start, changing it or manipulating it in between. So maybe they want to take their time to make sure this is properly delivered. But I think a lot of Nigerians are expectant on this. This government has not shown fiscal responsibility, or what I would call fiscal consolidation that should be. And that's why it's very important, because the monetary side is trying to squeeze cash out of the system by constricting liquidity, by also raising NPR, by raising CRR, and also doing all of those stuff, just to make sure that they keep a much more conservative monetary position. If the fiscal side is also not doing the same, we cannot get the kind of answers that we want. So the federal government has to significantly find that balance. Projects that are most important, that are productive, that have productive use to most Nigerians, are things that should be done, not things that are done just to advance either political mileage or just to benefit people directly. I don't think this one should be done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I argued earlier that it was mostly, propaganda. It sounds like a government that, likes to paint itself like it is, and it's working. Without actually taking time to think through some of these policies. You mentioned the expatriate levy. I even forgot about that before. The student loan, if you remember, even in the previous administration, the Nigeria Air project, it's just, let's announce things to make us look like we're working without actually thinking through how successful they would be.
Or the Dubai
exactly.
UAE.
Exactly. I want you to also speak about budget implementation, and if that's one of the things that we may also be getting wrong. We do not x-ray the implementation and the success of every budget. And so when we're talking about 28 trillion naira now, for a budget, will there be questions asked as to how successful the budget was at the end of the year?
Thank you so much. Budget implementation in the Nigerian parlance is about what gets priority most times for the political class. And I will give you an example. There was a FEC meeting readout that was published today, I think yesterday or this morning. And I read there was an augmentation of a project from 112 billion naira to 895 billion. So a project was awarded 2012, close to 12 years ago. That project has not been completed. Now you're augmenting the project you should have completed by your standard for around 12 billion naira. You're now needing 896 billion to complete that project. And why do we do that? And it's not that we did not borrow money to do capital project. It's not that we did not spend money on capital project. But capital projects are not targeted. They are not targeted. So you see that you have a big loaf of bread with a small, with a small bit of a butter. You're trying to spread, put a small margarine or put butter on a big loaf. It will not be suitable for eating. That's what we keep doing in the Nigerian situation. And instead of us to target, so that's why we don't, even when we implement, We implement 5%, 5%, 5% in multiple places. Instead of implementing 30%, 40%, 80%, 60%, 45% in few places. And that's why when you even talk implementation, you kind of want to see it from a composite angle. You want to see it from a detailed angle to say what exactly gets done this year. And so that's the situation with the country. Our implementation levels numbers are low because definitely current expenditures keep getting priority. Salaries will be paid. Lawmakers would enjoy. The people in the presidency would travel. Everybody would get themselves sorted. It's the capex that gets the delay. And when even the capex is done, it is not done in a proper manner. If procurement starts now, because we have a very complex procurement system, all procurement starts at once. So instead of you to say, what is the priority for the project in the procurement budget? No, you will not get that. All the procurements begin at once. So now you now spread, everybody wants some share in the national budget. And it's just like solar lights, solar street lights. What is the business of the federal government in providing a solar street light to a local community? What is the business of the federal government in providing boreholes in a local community when there are local government councils, where there are state governments? Well, we have come into this thing that we have turned to this sharing nature, and at the end of the day, it breeds a lot of inefficiencies at the end of the day. So it's whatever we want. I mean, it's whatever we need. If we want to change the country, we will have to ask the hard questions and do things differently. Else, we will keep going through this circle with just law of motion, but no movement at the end of the day.
All right.
It's really heartbreaking. Of course, the budget implementation, duplicated items in the budget that appear every year, and these funds just keep getting shipped out. It's a heartbreaking situation. Mr. Onigbinde, thank you very much for your time this morning. I will, of course, continue to look out for more updates on the budget page on Twitter and see if there's any, developments. But thanks for your time once again.
Thank you.
Much is a pleasure, sir. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
It's time for us to stretch our legs a bit and see what Nigerians are saying. And we go straight to one big story trending on the social media space. No, it's not about the budget padding. No, it's not about the postponed student school loan. And yes, it's about this story. The All Progressives Congress APC Deputy National Chairman North, Honorable Ali Bukar Dalori in Maiduguri, is giving out 100 million naira to help the less privileged and vulnerable people during Ramadan. Now, he chose to give the funds in cash to make it easier to distribute. And this was displayed to the public via social media. Yes, there was a picture of the cash, the money, everything displayed, 100 million naira. That's what you have here on the screen. Can you see it? Well, Nigerians, however, took to social media and took his actions to mean something else. They started calling on the EFCC and the CBN to quickly intervene. And questions were asked. Isn't it against the law to actually put that huge sum of money? And besides, what bank would give you this amount of money in cash? Let's see what the tweets are saying, as this is one of the biggest stories trending on social media. Hello, Dr. Yemi Cardoso. Of course, that's the CBN governor. With all your strict banking reforms at CBN, how did one man remove 100 million naira in cash with plans to redistribute it? These are the people crashing our economy, and you act blind to it, then start harassing innocent business people. How much more does he have at home? Remember, the views here are the views that strictly belong to those who we actually take a look at. And that's a big question there. 100 million naira in cash? Hope you're watching the CBN governor. That's what he's indeed reiterating. Voltage says, you wonder why bandits are kidnapping more and more people in the north after seeing this. Why won't they? And that kind of like has a very strong implication if you look at it, because if you have 100 million naira in cash, what you're simply telling the bandit is, okay, they have cash, then they can as well, go ahead and carry out the nefarious acts. That's one tweet as well. Another tweet quickly. Let's see what Nigerians are still saying about this story. Precious says, the same country, different law. Same country, different law. There are laws to this, and the CBN has the laws to that. Recently, there's a benchmark to how much you can withdraw from the counter. You cannot just take that sum of money. But how come the laws are different? Now, that's why she's asking, why are the laws different? In other words, the same country, but different laws. And these are the stories, most importantly, that many Nigerians would like to share their thoughts on, especially like this one. Well, that's all we're going to take on what Nigerians are saying. And why we're taking this story, we need you to go on our social media space to react. Tell us what you think about this story very quickly. Do you think what was done, even though it was to be done in love, do you think it was appropriate or it was indecent? Let's find out what you're saying when you drop your comments and let us know what you think. That's all I'm taking on what Nigerians are saying this morning. Osarogie, as we wrap up, your thoughts on this particular story.
Well, I mean, not much to say. I think everyone asks the right questions. You know, it's not. I don't know that it's legal to just have, you know, a huge pile of money like that, 100 million naira, regardless of what it's meant to be used for. Public, you know, display and availability of cash. I don't think it's legal, and the CBN normally should, you know, raise questions in situations like this. But like one person there said, you know, different laws for different people.
So we'll get to find out what the CBN would do or what would be said. Let's see. Let's see if they would say anything. Anyway, that's all we're taking today here on Breakfast Central. It's been a fantastic one.
All right, it's time for us to say goodbye. We'll be back here again tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a beautiful Thursday ahead and see you tomorrow morning.